live. You are live. Okay. Hello. I'm going to just double check from Facebook that I can actually see us over here because I don't trust technology. I don't trust it. I'm sorry. I want to. Okay, it shows that we are live. Wonderful. Awesome. Okay. Ocular Insight, thank you for joining us. Anyone who's able to catch this live, we are grateful to have you. This is Stephen Russell. He's joining me from, I forget, I know you're on the East Coast.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. I was going to say Philadelphia because I know that you see Dr. Sato and Dr. Shields, but obviously it's off just a little bit. So Stephen is joining us all the way across the East Coast. We had to kind of figure out time differences and fun things with schedules, but we were able to make this work for today. Obviously not on Instagram. Instagram doesn't like us today. That's okay. But for those of you who do prefer Instagram, I will be editing or have our technology assistant help edit a clip to share Stephen's story over on Instagram. And like I have been kind of trying to hint at everybody, we have so many different platforms where you can listen, you can come and tune into these stories and listen to other patients who, like you, are dealing with this kind of crazy disease, not kind of, it is crazy, and who are just looking to share their story, bring awareness. So if you are listening live and you feel like you are, able to share this video, whether it's when it's recorded or just later, I think there might be an option on Facebook to share a live video. So if you have the opportunity to share this live video with your audience, please do so and share this so that we can get more eyes. We can get more eyes onto the different patient stories. We can get more eyes onto the idea of ocular melanoma existing in the first place, because we know it's so rare, and we know it's so difficult to navigate, that the more eyes we can get on this, the better. The more awareness, the better. And I've always kind of ended my videos with this, but basically just the idea that you sharing this video of Stephen's could be the reason that somebody goes to get checked, because Stephen's story might resonate with someone in a way that your story just won't. And so just that idea of that ripple effect, and that we can impact each other in such a big way just by sharing. So if you're willing to share later or when you have the opportunity to, then thank you. Thank you for joining us. Just to introduce Stephen just a little bit before I let him dive into his story. So Stephen was diagnosed in March of 2008. And so that means that he is someone that we are really happy to talk to right now, because he's been around the block in the OM community for a long time, which I don't feel, I've been diagnosed for about a year, and I don't feel like you hear that quite as often, maybe as we would like to. And I don't think it's because these people don't exist. I think it's just because they move on with life and they continue living. And I think that's such a gift. So I'm so grateful to Stephen to, have him here to share his story. And for lack of a better way to introduce that, I just want to kind of let you go in and share your story as if I've never heard it. I've never read it.
Okay.
Okay.
A little background before my diagnosis. It was Labor Day weekend 2007, and I was shopping at the outlets with a couple of friends, and I went to try on a pair of sunglasses and jabbed the little arm into my right eye, and ended up in the emergency room with a bruised cornea, which is intensely painful, and the cornea was torn. So that was the fall of 2007. In February, the end of February 2008, I had a routine optometrist visit. She checked my eyes, checked my, everything about my eyes. She looked in my eyes. And at the end of that regular appointment, she said, "Oh, well, is there anything else?" And I said, "Well, I've been seeing this flash of light. I thought it was a residual thing from when I injured my eye. It's just like this dot would appear and then disappear and appear." And it worried me a little bit, but then, I dismissed it as, oh, it's just from the bruise. And she said, "Oh," and kind of got quiet. And she said, "Let me look again." And she went, and I was dilated, of course, always get dilated. Every time you go to your appointment with the eye doctor, make sure you get dilated. She looked and looked and looked, and she said, "Okay, I don't see anything, but I'm going to send you on to someone else to look at it, a retina specialist. I said, okay, all right. She said, no, I'm going to make the appointment for you now. And we went out to her desk out in the front, and she called a retina specialist. And I had an appointment the next morning. I'm like, okay. So I went to see him, and he looked and he says, well, you have a freckle in your eye. I'm like, okay. And the reason it was difficult to see it is it's way around to the front of my eye. He said, yeah, it's very small. It's remarkably small. He said, I'm sure it's nothing. Sometimes they're melanoma, but that's very rare. He said, but I think you should go to Will's Eye Hospital in Philadelphia. It's only an hour away. He said, they will take much better pictures of it and they will monitor it just to make sure it doesn't change. I said, I'm a little worried, but I'm like, well, if he doesn't think it's anything, okay, good. Turns out that this doctor trained under Carol Shields at Will's, not in cancer, not in oncology, but in retina. But said, Doug, go, I said, okay. And he said, oh, well, no, my secretary will make the appointment for you now. So I'm a little worried, but I'm like, well, if he doesn't think, he would have told me if it's anything to worry about. And they made an appointment it was a couple of weeks, I think. It wasn't immediate. So then I went home and I was worried. My husband came home from work and I said, I have this freckle in my eye. I don't know what to think about it. I don't know if I should be scared or whatever. I'm just going to get pictures taken. And he's like, well, okay. And then the next day, Will's Eye Hospital called me and they said, we think you should come in before. We have an appointment. It was like that next Monday. This was Wednesday, I think. And they said, we think you should come in right away. The first appointment we can get to you is Monday. Okay. My husband couldn't take me, had to work, something with work. And again, we're thinking this is just for some routine pictures and they're going to monitor it and see you in a year. So he couldn't take me. Another friend said she could take me. Turns out she couldn't take me. Another friend could take me. So, and they said, don't, make sure you have a ride because we're really going to dilate your eyes. So this friend of mine took me. I had no idea. I had never heard of Will's Eye Hospital. I didn't know there was an entire 14-story hospital dedicated only to the eye. So I go up to the top floor and I get in to see. Oh, it's a teaching hospital. So there's like 9 different people who see you and they're shining bright lights on my eye. They take pictures. They do a sonogram. They're looking in my eye, look over here, look over here. And they're making drawings. And then finally, it was hours I was there. They actually had to dilate my eye again. It had been so long. Finally, then I hear this flurry of activity out in the hall, and in comes Dr. Shields. She opens the door and she says, Stephen, we think you're going to be okay. Well, yeah, what? And she
like, thank you for prefacing it with this.
I mean, no, what else was she going to say, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be okay. We think we're pretty sure that it's melanoma. I'm like, what? In my eye? I had no idea that you could get melanoma inside your eye. It was, the world, time stops when that happens. When someone comes in and says, you have cancer, life stops, the time stops, and then everything else, your perspective changes. It's like coming out of the subway in New York and you don't know which way is uptown for a block. So they said, well, what are you doing Thursday? I'm like, we think you should come in for radiation. It's really the best treatment. I'm thinking, well, I'm like, I have things to do. I was a full-time church musician in the Catholic Church, and this was the week before Holy Week, which is the busiest time of year when I'm very stressed and working a lot. I said, I have things to do. So I went in to the hospital on Thursday. They put the plaque, a radiation infused plaque in my eye. At that point, I had to stay in the room. I think now you can go to a hotel, but at that time in 2008, I had to stay in that room. I could not leave that hospital room for 5 days. Fortunately, I was an hour and 15 minutes from home, so my husband stayed in a motel the whole time I was there. I had friends in and out of that room all the time, even though I'm radioactive. I have a lead shield covering my eye. The friends were like, "Yeah, it's okay." They brought me food. Um, the hospital food wasn't great, so I
It
ate
never is.
I
Never is.
take out like two meals a day takeout. I think at what point there was a limit, two people in the room, but I had I think 4 or 5 at one time, and they were okay with that. But I mean, it was pretty easy. I mean, I really had nothing to do for 5 days. But then I went home. I was actually going to get a ride from the hospital to a rehearsal after 5 days, and I decided when we got in the car that I was going home. It was too weird. Again, you've been through a very traumatic thing, even though you have nothing to do for 5 days. But think about it. I decided not to go to and direct. I was directing a choir rehearsal that night, and I decided not to go. I went home and slept. The next day, I took 1 day off of work, and then on Wednesday, I got my husband to drive me to work, and I played mass, I sang, I worked in my office all day, I got a ride home, and then I started driving, even though your eye is dilated for a month after, so that while your eye heals from the surgery, they want it to be dilated. So I was dilated for a month, wore the heavy glasses, went to work, and then it was Holy Week. I was there every day constantly for doing singing. I couldn't see out of the eye that was dilated. I had to read, out of one eye. But I went right back to work. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't know much about this disease. I didn't know statistics until I really started to look online and discovered they don't really tell you much at diagnosis other than you need to go see your primary care physician and get an abdominal scan once a year and a chest x-ray. Please do that and take care of yourself is pretty much what they say, and go back, hopefully you have a good doctor. I went to my doctor, I got scans, which is a frightening experience when they're looking for something. And I had the biopsy done, and that was in March. I had by July, I think I went back to the oncologist, and that's when they told me that I had what was called monosomy 3, the monosomy mutation. Of the 2 types of mutations that they tested for in 2008, mine was the most serious and almost always metastasizes. But Carol Shields, again, said it's remarkably small. My tumor was 2.7 millimeters thick, which is very small. By the time you get symptoms and go to the eye doctor and have them look at it, usually the tumors have grown very fast. And especially with a monosomy 3 diagnosis, they grow incredibly fast and then metastasize very quickly. Every time I went 3 times a year, I think, to see Dr. Shields, and then once a year, and then every other year. Every time I went there, she would tell her students, there were about 5 or 6 of them in the room, how remarkable it was that my tumor was found so small and hadn't metastasized by the time they found it. So I felt good and bad at the same time.
Oh, totally. I can understand that. Okay, well, I want to have you keep going, so I don't want to interrupt. So feel free.
Yeah. And then I mean that's a scene I replay a lot in my mind. That whole and share with other people. I think one of the best things about what I found online, I found a Cure in Sight, I found the Ocular Melanoma Foundation, I went to their patient retreats 3 times. The neatest thing about that is meeting people who have this because it's so rare. I mean, I remember at the Cleveland Clinic, I was sitting in a room with like 100 ocular melanoma patients, and I had barely even met one. You might have met one in the waiting room at the oncologist, but you know, I'm sitting in the room with 100 people who have been through what I have, and it's like you can't share fast enough with everybody. I think one of the best things is then sharing my story with newly diagnosed people, or people who you meet like through the Facebook group, who were sent to a place like Wills Eye Hospital but haven't gone yet and don't know what to expect. I had no idea. It would have been so cool to talk to somebody. What is this? What's going to happen when I get to the doctor? What if they find something? What is surgery? I had no idea. So that's one of the neat things about this kind of organization, A Cure in Sight, that I have become a buddy. I have talked to people who are newly diagnosed or who don't know if they want to get treatment. Their eye doctor says, you have a freckle. What do I do? You go on down the line and have somebody else look at it, which is what my eye doctor said. What interesting thing is, my optometrist did see the tumor and told me she didn't. She told me later, she says, I didn't feel, she was an optometrist. She said, I didn't feel qualified to really diagnose you with anything, but I knew you had to go see someone else, which is why she said, I'm going to call and make the appointment for you because I don't want you to treat this lightly. And I'm glad
Yeah, for sure.
because knowing the mutation of mine, since I did have the biopsy, it is like 100% that it would have metastasized, because that mutation always metastasizes, and they caught it early enough that it didn't, which is what remarkable. They don't usually catch a monosomy 3 tumor before it's metastasized. It's so aggressive. Since diagnosis in 2008, I decided you don't know what you do because of what happens, but you can only guess. I decided to get much more involved in yoga. I had been practicing yoga by then for about 8 years, and I decided to get much more serious. The yoga teacher I was studying with encouraged me to go to teacher training. So in 2010, at the 2-year mark, the 2-year mark is a significant graph point in uveal melanoma. And at the 2-year mark, I went to teacher training and became a yoga teacher. I also became vegetarian, mostly out of interest, but also at the encouragement of my yoga teacher training to at least explore being a vegetarian during the training. I have since stayed vegetarian since 2010. I knew that I was getting kind of worn out from being a full-time church musician and playing 5 and 6 masses a day. I knew that I didn't want to do that full-time anymore. So in 2015, I went to massage school and got my massage license. And in 2017, I retired from full-time church music, and I am now self-employed. I am a substitute church organist. I direct, at least pre-COVID, I directed 2 community choirs, which have not started singing together again because of the intense danger of singing in a room with other people singing. And I am a licensed massage therapist. I'm a yoga teacher, and really enjoying that. So that's kind of the arc of my.
No, I think this is awesome. We have quite a few comments over here. So I have a couple questions just specifically from a few people. One person is asking the 2-year mark. So what is, they're wondering what's the significance of the 2-year mark? And I think I understand, but I'm going to go ahead and let you share.
From my understanding, and again, I'm not an expert in oncology.
And neither am I. So like, I mean, I guess we can just share our understanding and then say, go talk to your oncologist.
From everything I've read, from everything that people have shared with me through the events that I've gone to, and I don't want to say do a Google search. If you do a Google search, it's frightening. You need to go to a certain places to get medical opinions. But that there's, as far as metastasis, and metastasis is often not a good thing in this kind of melanoma. That it happens much more frequently within 2 years. I think there's a big hump of if metastasis occurs in 2 years, then as it goes out, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it becomes much more remote that it could still happen after 20 years, but it happens
But it's
very
a lot more rare.
So getting through that 2 year, I know with a lot of other cancers, there's a 5 year, and often after 5 years, they say you have been cured of cancer. And with melanoma, especially uveal melanoma, I don't think you're ever out of the woods. It could metastasize after 25 years later. They don't know enough about it. There hasn't been the same kind of research as there has been in breast cancer or lung cancer. There aren't that many people who have it. So as far as the research is, they don't know. But but that 2 year mark is kind of, oh wow, okay. Which is why you go 3 times a year to see your oncologist. You get a scan 3 times a year, then you get it 2 times a year, then you get it once a year, and like now I get it like every other year. I think I get a scan.
So that's where I'm at. I'm at 1 year since diagnosis. So I'm halfway there, and so far so good. But I have those scans more frequently. So that first, like you said, that first 2 years tends to be the time that those scans are done more frequently, or at least that they should be, according to most of the research that oncology has. Dr. Sato is one who's really big into believing those scans need to happen frequently in the first 2 to 3 years. Depending on your biopsy results, depending on the information they have about your tumor. So definitely, if you are within that 2 years and you're not having scans, you need to find an oncologist who will scan you and who will make sure that they're monitoring you closely during a scan protocol period, which really, like you said, for us is a lot longer of a period to have scans and have a protocol for those scans. It's not like 3 years and then you're done, or a year out and you're safe. Like, it really, as scary as the unknown is, I would rather at least know that somebody's looking out for it for a longer period of time.
And there are people living with metastasis.
Yes.
There are things that you can do once it does metastasize. So it's
and it's so interesting. And that's I do have plans to have a couple, at least one gal who I have met who she has newly metastasized disease, and she's in treatment right now living with metastasis. And so I feel like, as scary as all those statistics and things can be on Google, Dr. Google doesn't diagnose, by the way, but just in case you're like me and you get all freaked out by Dr. Google, just trust your doctor. Make sure to take the doctor over Google anytime, and get lots of extra opinions if you feel like you need that, for sure. But I'm excited to have her share her story too, to just kind of talk about the journey of things shifting for her from being cancer-free to not, and then having to deal with all of that. So, but as far as your story goes, I did have a quick question. So with the plaque, like you mentioned that your plaque was small, or your tumor was small. It was very thin compared to most. I don't know exactly as far as my biopsy goes. Mine, they classify them by class 1, 1A, and 1B.
System of classification that wasn't part of my biopsy. The Castle 1, 1A, 2, whatever. And I guess I don't think they relate directly, but my monosomy 3 is more like the 2. That it's more likely to metastasize, and a 1 would be very less likely to metastasize. So it's already pretty much the 2 basic camps. One kind of mutation that doesn't metastasize very often, and one that usually does, but not always.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like, because of when you were diagnosed, like the biopsy was so different, and that's something that my ocular oncologist has kind of really been. She's been like, because I got diagnosed with a class 2, which means that I'm the highest risk of metastasis. And so, for where I'm at, it says, okay, well, within the first, 2 to 3 years, you have a 50-50 chance. And then within the first 5 years, that actually goes up instead of going down. Like, it basically says there's, by the end of 5 years, there's only 78-ish% of patients who, or sorry, there's whatever 78 out of 100 is, what's the leftover of that? Is that 20, 22?
22. Yeah.
22. So basically 22% at 5 years of the class 2 melanoma are, statistically said to be metastasis free. And that's a much smaller range of people by the end of that 5 years. So that kind of sometimes feels scary to me. But like, one of the things that she told me is that these biopsies, these statistics, they change so fast because of how much they're trying to research, and they're trying to expand their research. And so she's like, something could say that this, is your case right now, and then in 2 more years, that could totally change and everything could look completely different. So don't get discouraged by whatever your biopsy results are if you choose to have that done, because it doesn't guarantee anything in the slightest. Like, obviously Stephen had something that was supposed to be super high risk and high risk of metastasis, but he's sitting here with absolutely nothing. Like, and he's healthy, he's thriving, he's living his life. Like, I feel like that's just proof, like, that the biopsy does not dictate what happens to you.
And that's the strongest thing anyone said to me, and that's the strongest thing I can say to anybody else, no matter where you are on this journey or any other health related journey, is you have to live your life. You have to keep moving. And there were many times that I just wanted to go home and stay home and not do anything. But I didn't. And people that I would meet that had this kind of a health issue or other health issues say, you still have to live your life, and you have to not keep replaying it and going to what if. Say, well, all right, I'm gonna go to yoga school, and I'm gonna get my massage license, and I'm gonna retire. I retired. I mean, just to have things to do that maybe I normally would have done without this, but maybe not. Maybe I would never have retired. I was 56 when I retired from my career and became self-employed, which was scary. But maybe having this diagnosis helped me to do that. To say, do what you've been thinking about doing, and don't stop, and don't sit home and just stew in it. And also the thing that's neat about some of the organizations I've met and the people I've met who have this is that a lot of people, when I was first diagnosed, would ask me, how is your eye? I said, my eye is fine. And then I would start to talk about all the fears I had, and nobody wanted to hear it. Oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You look great. Your eye is fine. You can still, you can see 20. Yeah, I have 20. Yeah, I can see. Oh, you're going to be fine. Well, no, I'm not fine. So to have people to talk about that aren't going to stop you from talking about what you need to talk about, but also people who are going to tell you, you know what, you have to live.
Yeah. Because if you don't, like, it may have already won.
Right. Plan on living. And the whole scanxiety thing, the whole thing, I don't know if that's a common word, scanxiety.
It totally is. It's become a more common word in my vocabulary.
The month before you're supposed to have a scan, the week before you're supposed to, it's a whole separate feeling. And then after the scan has been taken and you wait for the results, whether it's a day or 2 days, it's like being on 9 cups of coffee and half an hour of sleep.
Yes, I totally understand that. So as far as scanxiety goes, you obviously have been doing this a lot longer than maybe some of us, obviously a lot longer than I have. I'm, a year into having scans every 3 months. So what would you say helps you the most with scanxiety right now? Obviously your scans are a little further out and apart, but just throughout your journey, what's helped?
Keeping doing what you're doing. I'm not saying focus more on work, focus more on friends and family, but just keep doing it, and have people that you can share that with. whether it's a Facebook group when you post anxiety and people log, yeah, more power to you. It's just nice to get that off to someone who knows what I'm talking about. If I talk to
Mhm.
people who don't have this journey, then it's like, well, what? Go, yeah, you're doing the right thing, right? It's like, yeah, but you don't know the feeling in my head. Um,
You don't know how crazy I feel, like just that validation then is what I'm hearing.
21 years of practicing yoga and breathing techniques. When I'm in the scan, the waiting room, waiting to get scanned, doing a breathing technique, counting breath, retaining breath, is a powerful thing. Not just for anxiety, but for any kind of stress related.
Yeah, for sure.
Other tests. I mean, I have high cholesterol. Getting a blood test for high cholesterol, waiting for that to come back. I came of age. I came of age during the AIDS crisis. I graduated from high school and went to college right in the middle of the AIDS crisis, and getting through that is the same kind of thing. You just have to keep moving along. COVID, getting my first COVID test because I was exposed to someone who had it. Like that's frightening. This whole COVID thing is frightening. So getting through it, just saying, I'm going to do a breathing technique. I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. I'm going to do a half an hour of yoga. And then I'm going to go to the park, riding my bike, going to the beach, looking at the bay, looking at the water. they all they all help.
So I guess what I'm hearing is you have found ways to find peace, like in the midst of kind of some of the chaos and the stress, and that you don't just wait for that peace to come because of something external, that you create it.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, one of my ear pods is falling out of my ear. I'm like, just gonna take it out. But I think that that's probably one of the most powerful things about yoga, about meditation, is that you are the one creating the the practice. And so, okay, I know you're a yoga teacher. I know you do a lot of meditation. Say someone's listening who doesn't ever do yoga and they're thinking, well, I suck at yoga and I suck at meditation. Like, I can't do that. What would you say to them?
Um, Yoga would be a lot of people's opinion about what yoga is, if they're not familiar with it, is a gym exercise. Yoga is a mental. It's a process for achieving mental stability, to be able to focus, mental focus. Physical postures are a tool for helping the mind to quiet, and then meditation is just sustaining that focus. People who tell me, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible. Well, it's not about flexibility. You might become more flexible doing it, but the physical postures are really only a help to get the mind quieted. So yeah, flexibility might be a side effect, but it's not the goal, and you don't have to be flexible to do yoga. It's like saying you're too sick to go to the doctor. I can't go to the doctor, I'm too sick. I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible. No, it's not. It's about your body and what you do with it safely. As far as meditation and sustaining that focus, people tell me I can't meditate because I can't shut my mind off. And I tell them that will happen once, but they won't be aware of it. Your mind will turn off, but you'll be dead. So
I was going to say, I know where this is going.
so the mind's job is to throw things at your attention and say, do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this?
Like, it keeps firing all day long. It doesn't stop.
It's taking in information and saying, I don't know what you need to do with this, but here, you know. So that's
Yeah.
that's what keeps us alive as a species, because our minds are always taking in information, and it keeps us alive. So that the purpose of doing meditation is to focus on one thing and to let all these other possibilities of focus just kind of fade out and not pay attention to them. I like to say it's like driving a car. You're looking at the road and it starts to rain. You don't watch the rain. You look at the car in front of you, you look at the stripe in the road, you look at the road, and you keep driving even though the rain is going like this. Or
That's a really good analogy. I've never heard that.
if you watch the rain, you'll get in an accident. Then you turn on the windshield wiper and the windshield wiper is going like this in front of your face, but you're not watching it. You're watching the road. So yeah, the windshield wiper is still there, but you're not paying attention to it. As a matter, you probably don't even see it. And then you don't see the rain. You're looking at the taillights from the car in front of you so that you don't run off the road. So meditation is a training. You're training your mind to pay attention to something that you choose.
That's really powerful.
So that's one way to look at it, to say, yeah, your mind.
Well, and essentially both of them, like the way that you described yoga, I've always looked at it as a way to kind of just bring healing and stretching and lengthening to my body, to my muscles. I like weightlifting, I like cardio, like I do those kinds of things, but incorporating the yoga, I found helpful, but I didn't quite put it together that part of that is the mental stillness that comes from breathing in and out consistently and focusing on those things. It's almost like a blend of like the yoga is almost like taking the meditation and then adding some of those, those yoga poses to help.
Right. As far as yoga has 8 parts, and the things that you do with your body physically is only 1/8 of all the other things. That there's ethical principles, there's breath control, and you use the body in this process as a tool. So you're focusing on your body, you're moving it, you're bringing it into poses, you're breathing, you're watching your breath, but it's a tool for the overall things that yoga is, not just for physical tone or flexibility.
Yeah, I love that. So overall, this is, yoga, meditation, using these as a practice. It's just that, it's a practice. It's something that you become more familiar with, I would say, not necessarily better at. You become more familiar, more comfortable doing it with practice. The same, kind of like your driving analogy. You don't just start out being comfortable driving in the rain for the first time as a teenager. You need practice.
You're learning how to not pay attention to the windshield wiper and what to look at. Are you looking at the tail lights from the car in front of you, or watching the stripe at the side of the road is a way of not paying attention to the raindrops or the snow or
whatever external is going on. I love that. Okay. And I can also attest to, especially leading up to my scans, but I've been trying to, just for my own mental sanity as a mom of 3, I incorporate at least 3 to 5 minutes of meditation every day if I can get to that. I can actually say I have not done that today. I slept in a lot. Meditated while I was sleeping. It's great. But I also can attest to that being helpful during scanxiety and that, that time leading up. So if you have not tried that yet and you're someone who struggles a lot with scanxiety, give that a try. There's tons of YouTube videos. I'm sure if you reach out to Stephen, he might be able to point you to some research or to some resources. I'm not sure if you do any online classes, but if you have that.
I have some YouTube. I have a YouTube channel under Becoming Sound. And there are some yoga videos there. There are some music videos there. There are some vegetarian recipes, cooking videos there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can follow him on Instagram, Becoming Sound. You can also find him on his YouTube channel, Becoming Sound. Sounds like Stephen has some good resources that we can learn from. Okay, I'm trying to see. During your actual plaque, I think I started to ask you about this, but your plaque was, because your tumor was smaller, was your plaque pretty small? Do you remember?
I think the plaque is a universal size. It's about the size of maybe a nickel or a dime. I don't know if they make them in different sizes because of the size of
I feel like they must make them in different sizes, because the one that mine, I only ask because my tumor and your tumor sound like they were placed similarly. And so, the difference is that mine wasn't found until my eye exhibited symptoms. And so my tumor was huge. But my tumor is in that front inner corner of my eye. And that front inner corner, like you said, is a really difficult spot for optometrists to be able to locate. So just the fact that, you're saying that she was able to find it is miraculous to me. And the part of me that still has a lot of anger toward my own diagnosis and toward my doctor for not finding it sooner is just why couldn't she have found mine sooner? This would have been much better it sounds like. But again, like we have no guarantee of exactly how anything would turn out. So I know for me though, my plaque was really difficult during that period of time that I had the plaque. So for you, you were in the hospital. I mean, I guess scale of 1 to 10, 0 or 1 being low pain, 10 being like the most painful thing you've ever experienced. Where would you rate your plaque experience?
As far as the plaque itself, it was a little uncomfortable. I won't say it was painful. I didn't take any medication. Since I was in the hospital, they came in, several times a day. The nurse would come in and put ice on it, and they would change the dressing or whatever. So I was in good hands. I didn't have to do it myself. It was mildly irritating to move my eyes. So I would try to like look at the TV. I didn't really read. I didn't really watch a lot of TV simply because I didn't want to have my eyes to keep.
Yeah, tracking is painful.
I don't think it was. I don't know, 1 to 10, maybe a 1 or a 2 as far as discomfort. After the surgery, you're numbed. My whole head hurt. I mean, that evening and the next morning was not the eye. It was like my whole head just from.
Yeah, just pretty painful from the actual surgery.
Pushing your head and so that was uncomfortable, but it went away. I think that's the only time that once that initial medication wore off from the surgery, it's like, ow, but a headache.
Yeah.
Ow. But yeah, the eye irritating, but I was fine. And I had people in the room. I carried on conversations. I watched.
That's great.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was pretty easy. The weirdest thing is I couldn't even go out in the hall. I would go to the door and kind of look out thinking I didn't have a roommate. I had a private room, and they often put you in 2 people at the same time. For some reason I had a private room, which was great for having guests, but it's like I have nobody to talk to. I would go like
I'm kind of bored.
Is anybody out? To see if anybody else was sitting in their room with no one to talk to, but it was lonely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was only an hour from home, so I had lots of visitors, and I couldn't imagine. There were people that flew into the hospital from Ireland to have this done, and I'm like, which it'd be great to have like a buddy system where I could go and just like talk to somebody while they're there if they're by themselves.
Well, and maybe that's something that we could advocate for, within Wills Eye Hospital for patients who go there, that there is, more of a buddy system or something like that.
I think the law now allows you to go to a hotel. And
yeah, so I mean, I didn't go to Wills. I actually was treated out here in Phoenix, but I was actually able to be home. The only caveats to my treatment was I could not be around my kids.
Right.
Just because kids and radiation, bad idea. I also had a nursing baby at the time. I had to stop breastfeeding. So there were, kind of a few extra complications to that, but I was able to be at my mom's house and they took care of me. And I have, adult visitors, grown-up visitors who came and just would, again, with the giant lead eye patch. But it's interesting to me that you say that your plaque was not very painful, because mine was like excruciating, but mine like wrapped all the way around the front and the back of my eye. Like mine was ginormous. Mine was about as big of a plaque as you can get. I
had no radiation damage. I didn't lose any vision.
So you have vision in this eye, in your OM eye.
Complete vision in this eye. I actually had.
That's awesome.
And they said I would have a cataract within a couple of years. I developed a cataract for 10 years. I had cataract surgery on this eye 10 years after plaque.
Wow.
And it's like, yeah. So it was, and I think the amount of seeds and the amount of radiation they put onto the plaque, mine was very, very small since it was so thin. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't actually credit all of the yoga and the meditation and all of these other things, but, we could also maybe say that, maybe these things have something to do with delaying or putting off some of the more negative side effects. I have kind of a weird situation with my own eye. Like I have been I'm a big affirmation person. And so I say like affirmations just to kind of train my brain to think differently and to not dwell on the negative. And one of the things that I've been telling myself since my plaque surgery was, what if, instead of what if the negative, I say, what if my eye heals faster and like better than I could possibly even imagine? I don't have any sight. I don't have any guarantee that that sight will ever even come back just because of how large my tumor was, my retina detached. But I will say that I went from March in saying this and just kind of meditating on this idea that like, what if it just turns out better than I could imagine? And I just focus on that. That I went from March, my doctor telling me I had signs of glaucoma and the blood pressure and all of these more negative things that tend to happen with a lot of radiation to your eye, to then in June, when she checked my eye again, she said, your eye looks better than it did in March. Like, I don't understand. It should be deteriorating because of everything that happened to it, but it's getting better. And I can't really explain it. She's like, I can't explain it. It's good. I'm going to take it, but like, I can't explain it. And so, all of this kind of, I'm just learning and kind of entering into this realm of like, maybe some of that more, I don't know how to say it, like mystical, like just like trusting the universe and like trusting God, trusting the universe, like trusting that like things can work and work out better than maybe we have information telling us otherwise, right? So I feel like that has been helpful to me, but I'm also hearing you like developing all these practices and then having cataract surgery 10 years later than they, or potentially 8 years later than they anticipated. Right. Like, I think there's something to be said of getting, present with yourself and learning how to focus your thoughts, learning where to focus your thoughts. So I guess I hope that if you can take anything out of Stephen's story, besides all of the amazing things that he shared so far, like one of the biggest things that I'm taking away is just this idea that like practicing that self-care, that meditation, learning how to engage in those practices can be really, really helpful in your life, in dealing with this disease, in everything.
And also, I'm a musician, and
yes,
that has to have amazing healing properties to it. I also,
for sure, music.
For my yoga practice, I have singing bowls, and there are studies on the sound that singing bowls makes, that there's a healing property to that sound and to focusing on that sound. It's all part of the same kind of thing. But and another thing that happened since I retired, I do music, but during the pandemic, when we were on lockdown and I couldn't do yoga, I couldn't have yoga classes, I couldn't do massage, I couldn't have a choir rehearsal, we weren't doing church in person, and I'm home, and I sat down at the piano and started playing the piano, and I did some YouTube videos of me just playing the piano, and I realized it's the first time that I sat down and learned a piece for the piano for my own enjoyment, not for work, since high school.
Wow.
It's like, wow.
I play piano as well, so that's really cool.
I would tell people, if you used to play music, if you said, oh, I should really get back to piano or guitar, do it. Take it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Playing it again.
And I totally can say too, like that's a healing feeling, like to engage with music, to feel the music, to create music, to play a piece, to learn a piece. I feel like I haven't learned all of it, but I learned a portion of a musical piece that I really loved listening to. It just has a lot of movement to it in the sound, and a lot of emotion behind it. And I learned a portion of it when I was, during my plaque, and I was just like practicing playing that during that week while I was waiting. And it was really helpful, like to just focus on that and to even just to have the victory of accomplishing something small like that, during that week and during that period of time. And I could just close my eyes and I could just listen to it and play and pick it out, because I wasn't looking at actual music at that time. So like, like if you guys have an instrument that you play or want to learn an instrument, like there's no better time. Like you may as well just try it. Like we were talking earlier before we started this broadcast, like, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, okay, it's a failed experiment. Like it's okay. It's a learning curve. So, all right. I'm going to just kind of briefly go back over some of the top 3 things that you mentioned, just to recap. And then I think, unless you have anything else you want to share, I do actually, while I'm recapping, if you can think of your favorite song, or just one of your favorite songs that you could just spur of the moment, tell us something that brings you inspiration, brings you peace. It could be, one of your church pieces that you've played, anything goes. But just to recap, I heard that patient retreats and just meeting other patients, being able to have your feelings and your story validated in these kinds of like the Cure Insight, I Believe seminars. There's other seminars I think that are done to gather patients together and allow us to connect. those are helpful. If you haven't been to one of those, as soon as you have the opportunity to go to one, go. We do have the I Believe seminar is happening October 8th and 9th, and it's still digital this year, but we're hoping by next year we'll be able to be back in person. So those in-person interactions, connecting with people one-on-one, sharing your stories, just being able to know that you're not alone, that helps. Number two, I'm hearing, I guess, maybe just some lifestyle changes that you made adjustments to. You adjusted with, the vegetarian lifestyle as far as eating better and, involving more yoga, meditation. And then I guess just overall, like just this drive and this love of like living your life is what I'm taking kind of as an overarching theme out of this, is that like, don't be limited, or don't let this limit you from living your life. Like make this your reason to live even bigger than you already are.
Yeah, and I'm a Cancer as far as zodiac goes, and we tend to stew, and I can get really melancholy and go into my shell very easily.
Yeah.
And I know that it's something that helps me. It's a good and a bad. It's something that really makes me go inside and be introspective, but I can get wallowing in the mud and get buried in it. And I know that, that I have to get out, even if I don't feel, if I feel like I really want to hide, is just go out and just talk to somebody or just go for a walk, get out of my shell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't set up camp. Don't set up camp in the negative feelings.
Well, they don't set up camp and then complain that nobody's there.
Yeah, for
I'm hiding. I'm in my shell. I have my claws out, and now I'm complaining that nobody's talking to me.
Yeah. Well, okay. I love this. The self-awareness, everything that you shared. I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to share. So let's go ahead and end. If you have your favorite song in mind.
I'm really bad with favorites.
I know. Okay. Well, if you need to give us your top three, that's fine.
So I'm mostly a classical musician. That's what I've mostly spent my life doing. But one of my favorite composers is George Gershwin. My wedding song was "Embraceable You." It's what I danced with my husband at my wedding. So that's one. And then as far as playing Bach, anything but lots of things by Bach, but because Bach, it can be so heady. It's gorgeous music, but there's so much intricacy in its composition. It's almost like approaching perfection, and going through the mental process of playing it is entering into parts of my brain that I don't come up with on my own. So I don't know if this is still a term, but it's like defragmenting. I don't know if you still do that to a hard drive. Back in the day, back in the 80s, when I first had my first computer, you had to defragment the disk. And what that was, when you were entering things onto the hard drive, they were all in different pockets, and defragmenting put similar things together, and then cleared up a lot of extra space that you were wasting on your hard drive, and then your computer ran better. So it's like defragmenting. I'm putting my head into somebody else's work that approaches perfection. I'm going through it, even if I don't play it well. It's making my brain growing through a defragmenting process of making it work more efficiently and faster and with less junk. So a cleaning.
Awesome. No, I love Bach. He's got some beautiful music.
In addition to being beautiful music to listen to, what my brain goes through to try to play it is like, wow, I'm resetting. It's like resetting. So that would be it.
Well, I love that. Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. I'm just double checking through the chat over here. This is cool. We didn't have the chat feature like last time. This is very handy. But okay, so I think we're gonna go ahead and end our video and our broadcast here. Oh, you know what? We did miss one question.
Okay.
Do you credit your 2007 accident to your cornea to early detection, or do you think that was kind of somehow like totally unrelated? Like, do you think you were more sensitive maybe to things happening to your eye because of having had that injury?
I always thought that it was a reason why I would have dismissed it. And
I don't understand enough about the eye, like the cornea and eye, to know like what that would have done. But That's interesting. Like, I guess that's an interesting question.
Yeah, when I first did that, I didn't want to go to the hospital. I waited until
Hmm.
the next day. And had I been more aware, I would have had more people look at it. I kind of then when I saw the light, I kind of dismissed it. I didn't think, oh, I need to run to the eye doctor because I'm seeing a flash of light. And now I know that that's an incredibly dangerous symptom to
Hmm.
flashes of light. And since the plaque radiation, I did have the pulling. The scar tissue would pull on the retina and cause like a lightning thing. That terrified me, but the oncologist said that's normal. That's the scar tissue, and not to worry about that. But this was before the plaque. That would, had I known, I would have gone to the eye doctor and said, I see this flash of light. Please tell me what's going on. I might have caught this even earlier, and I'm talking 5-6 months earlier, which
Yeah.
means that incredibly dangerous, aggressive tumor was growing for months before anybody looked at it to see what it was. So,
Yeah. And what a miracle that they found it when they did, for sure.
and it was still as small as it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, it's so crazy. Like, it would be interesting. I mean, I guess the sad, or the hard, not sad, but the hard thing about it is that there's really probably no way to know, because if they did find someone who had, um, like, there's no way to know what the actual growth rate of it would be over a long, prolonged period of time. Because someone, say like you or me, if they were found it at the very moment that it was, detectable, and then they followed it over time to see what's the growth rate, what's, when does it start to grow faster, or any of those kinds of things, we wouldn't even want that to happen, right? Because then that would be bad for the patient. But if there were a way to like isolate that, I feel like that would be like, scientists, do that, not in somebody's body.
The optometrist who was brilliant enough to refer me on well, that I said, hey, there's something going on. She looked again, sent me on. She, since that was the first time she actually saw. She knew what uveal melanoma was, but she had never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
She saw it. She knew what it was. She didn't tell me she knew what it was because she said, I'm not going to diagnose you with melanoma. I'm not an MD. So,
Yeah.
so she bought a much more higher resolution camera because of,
Mm-hmm.
she said, now that I've seen this, I'm going to get this better camera. And she has since then had other um, OM patients in her.
That's awesome that she's taken those steps to
Right.
diagnose,
And
or to at least catch it.
she's not an ophthalmologist. She's just an optometrist. And she's like, yeah, now I need to tell people you need to get dilated and I need to look in your eye. But then to send me on, and the retina specialist did not deal with eye cancer either, but he knew what it
Mm-hmm.
was. He said, well, it's small. He was brilliant enough to say, you need to go to Will's Eye Hospital and have them.
That's awesome.
And then if any of those pieces of the puzzle had not I was even reluctant to tell the optometrist that I was seeing this flash of light. I sat in
Yeah.
for half an hour while she's looking in my eye and never told her that I was seeing this flash of light. And I wouldn't have said anything had she not said, is there anything else? And I reluctantly said, well, yeah, I see this little dot.
I
I,
don't know if, like, I feel like I might be the only one. I feel like I go into I've had eye visits since I was 8, because I've had glasses since I was a kid. But I feel like I go into an eye doctor's visit and I'm just like, it's awkward. I don't know why it's awkward. It's like more awkward than the dentist to me. And they're like not even looking at my mouth. And I have a hard time talking and like just having a conversation. Like, it just feels so awkward. So I feel like just trying to be open to sharing is, yeah, that definitely takes some courage.
the neat thing
Um,
the neat thing about going to Dr. Sato, who
mhm.
specializes in metastatic uveal melanoma, that's his specialty.
Yes.
I'm so thankful that there's Carol Shields, who devotes her career to eye cancer, and there's Dr. Sato,
Mhm.
who devotes his career to metastatic eye cancer. But when I went to see him, I said to him, it's so nice to see a doctor that knows more about this than I do. Because my
Yeah. No, for sure.
don't know they didn't know anything about eye cancer. They didn't know the product. They didn't know what to do. They'd never seen a patient with melanoma in the eye. So I was telling them, this is what I need. This is what I need. Here's what, so it was just nice to see somebody that was an expert in it to say, what do I do? You know?
Well, and what a gift that those experts exist and that they're still practicing medicine. They're still researching. They're still searching for whatever. I guess I have a hard time. I'm trying to believe in a cure in general, but I feel like cancer in general, it's more like, can we just find a way to kill it? Is that a cure? I don't even know what to call it, but like finding a way to make sure that this doesn't, continue to be a rampant thing for the people that it does affect, I think that's just been reassuring to me to know that there are doctors that are making that and dedicating their life to their life's work to this. So
it's so much less the dirty word. Cancer, even for me, for before this, I didn't want to talk to anybody that had cancer. I was awkward. Now it's like, bring it on. This is not you need to talk about this. Yeah. So it's made me
both for the sake of, I feel like talking about it, like obviously having these kinds of conversations, this has been, just as, like I was telling you, like I'm a year out from my diagnosis, like, and just having these conversations with the handful of patients that I have over the last, 2-3 months that I've been doing these videos, doing these interviews. It's been incredibly helpful for me because it just helps normalize it on some level, like, and just bring it, out of the shadows of this scary taboo thing to, no, let's talk about this. Let's not be afraid to talk about it. Let's shed some light on it so that we can understand it and we can move forward. And, I feel like it's helpful to talk about because it validates all of the crazy things that you feel. And I feel like it's also helpful, like we were talking about earlier, it's helpful to talk to people who get it because it is this kind of silent thing.
Right.
It's like this silent thing that, like you said, when you're talking to your everyday friends who don't deal with this on a daily basis, they don't really understand. They want to be there for you. They want to be sympathetic. They want to help. But at the same time, once you get past the plaque and your eye is supposedly better, they kind of stop thinking about it. And for you, for me, for anyone else in our community, this doesn't go away. Right. So, okay, I need to wrap this up. I hear my kids out there like, what's mom doing? But thank you so much, Stephen, for jumping on with us. Thank you, those of you who were able to tune in from Facebook, for your questions, your interaction over here on the chat. I appreciate you. If you have a desire to connect with Stephen, I believe you and Jeffrey Howard are in a Facebook group for some of the men. Is it the Man Cave, the Ocular Melanoma Man Cave?
Yeah.
Okay, so those of you gentlemen, if you have a desire to connect with Stephen or with Jeffrey Howard, who was on with an interview with me last month, I'm sure they would be happy to have you if you're not already connected to the, to the Facebook group. If you are new to this community, newly diagnosed, newer to the community because you've just never found it before, we're happy to have you. I think it was Chantel Feinberg was sharing that, just as a reminder, for those of you familiar with a Cure in Sight, if you do have a desire to connect more one-on-one or just in a group setting, I think with more patients, there's a Zoom 7 p.m. Eastern time that a Cure in Sight does every Tuesday. I don't personally host this. It's hosted by Melody Burchett and, community patient. It's the community of where patients can come together through Zoom and talk to each other, ask questions, and just get real-time response. And I feel like that can be really helpful. So if you need that, feel free to contact me or Melody through the Facebook page, the Instagram, and we can get you hooked up with the Zoom link so that you know how to access that. As far as where you can find us, where you can listen, we have a Podbean podcast. So you can find us on Podbean. And I'm working on figuring out with our tech support how we can make that show up on Apple Podcasts, because I think it used to and now it doesn't. We don't know why. So we have a YouTube channel that I will post this video to YouTube channel. And then we have an Instagram and a TikTok that I mostly am in charge of over there. So feel free to follow us over there. Bring your friends, bring your family. I'm planning on figuring out a giveaway to do on Instagram in some capacity. Sorry. Apparently we've been talking for a while and my voice is tired. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast and then we will see you guys the next time.